I wanted to thank everyone for joining me on this live stream. As the title suggests, today we're going to be creating a rock from scratch. We're going to add that to our grass that we made in the very first video, and kind of go over some other important things that didn't discuss last time, but I think it's a good time to discuss now. And basically, what that is whenever you're modeling like this, oftentimes you're going to be modeling and you're going to be creating assets not by yourself but with a group of people. And one of the most important things when working with other people is organization. You want someone to be able to look at the files that you've made and open them straight off the bat. You don't want them to have to do any guesswork between, well, I'm not quite sure what this is, and it gets very muddy whenever you have hundreds of assets and they're all just named thing number 1 or thing number 27. They need to be named correctly and all that good stuff. And especially if you have multiple objects in the scene, you don't want to have multiple Maya files that are all just randomly named and only you understand them, because if they have to stop and they have to ask you what file is what, chances are they're not going to waste the time. If they do waste the time, then again, that's a waste of time that they could have been spending doing anything else. And if you're working in a big company, chances are you do that too many times and they're just going to kick you to the curb and find someone who can name their assets correctly or name their projects correctly, because there's a million people out there, and just because you can't name something could be reason enough for them to get rid of you. So let's not have that happen. What I'm talking about, click on File and go to your project window. Now your project window sets everything up really nicely for you or to work on, so you know where everything's at, and it also makes it very easy for someone to know where they need to look. If they need to look for textures, well, that's going to be in the it's either going to be in source images or images. I think images is the one that when you save renders out. But that's besides the point, really. It just makes it easier for you to find everything that you need. And again, makes it easier for someone else to find it. This also prevents you from, say, making a texture on your computer and then having someone else open the files and find out, oh no, that texture that I needed for this, this window or whatever isn't in the scene, so they can't use it, and then you have to send it and you have to rework a couple of things to get it to work. That's time that's wasted, and in this industry there's not a lot of time to be wasted because we're under strict deadlines. So current project, for this one I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. It says new project. We're going to call this Project X. Click on this. This is where I was doing a test setup. And we're going to put it in my personal projects. Go ahead and create a new folder and call that Project X. Don't have to double click, just click once and select it. Now you can see that our current project is Project X. Location should be right where you saved it. If it's not, do it again and hit accept. Now this is going to be set up in our project, but as a good habit, just go to set project. Should go immediately to this. Just click once on Project X and say set. Now we're absolutely sure that anything that we save is going to be in that Project X folder. So now that we've got all of that set up, we're ready to start modeling. And our first little trick here, since we're going to be modeling a rock, obviously we're going to want a round surface to model it from. You can do this two ways. Most of the ways that people, when they're first starting out, they think, okay, round object, start out with a sphere. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll move that down to the bottom and just snap it right to the origin. Again, how I did that, hold down D and V and move it around until you get it on the very bottom vertex. You can see that is not on the bottom vertex. There we go. So now we know that when we hold down X and we move, this is snapping directly to the grid, and that vertex is at 0, 0, which is what we want. So that when we import this model, we know that it is going to be right in the scene. Good for placing things directly on the ground. Sometimes you need to do this, sometimes you don't. It's a good habit to keep everything at the 0, 0 origin, just because if you were to import something into a scene and your origin is way over here, then every time they're moving the object in the scene, most game engines import it just like this, and your handles are going to be way over here. So when they're trying to precisely move something, it just makes it really difficult. So unless you're being a jerk, I wouldn't recommend doing that. So let's go ahead and we'll snap this back to the grid by holding X, and again snapping it back down to 0, 0. So again, most people would think, okay, I'm going to make a rock, so I'm going to start out with something round. It's going to make my life a whole lot easier. And we know from the get-go that this is entirely too many polygons to make something that's going to be very small and not really, it's not going to be a big asset, so it doesn't need to be this big. Not in size, but in polygon count. I mean, this has 400 faces. But let's go ahead and let's reduce it a little bit to something like so. Okay, that's a little better. However, it still is very jagged, and we could move this around into the shape that we needed, but there's something very peculiar about doing it this way, is that we have two poles, one here and one here, and we're basically left with, instead of polygons, we're left with tries. And that's fine, because we can go in and we can delete these and make them into polygons. Sometimes, as you can see, it doesn't really match up because we had an odd number. So let's go ahead and undo that, go back to normal. But you see, this is what I'm talking about. You got to really think ahead on this one if you're going to do it this way. And we have these two poles here, which means that our texture is going to be pinched at this point, and it's going to be a little more work than what it's worth. And I think that there is a much more efficient way to do this. And we'll just move this off here for a second, show you for comparison. Another way to do it is to start off with a square. Okay, I know it seems really silly. Why would you do that? Well, the reason why you would do this, You don't have to add any subdivisions or anything from this our attributes tool panel. Basically what we're going to do is come up here and find the smooth option, and click it once. Immediately we can see that we've smoothed this into a nice round object which does not have poles and is completely comprised of four-sided polygons. This is what we want because this is going to make our life so much easier in the end. Again, it doesn't you're still going to have to move it around and shape it in the right way, but as you can see, while they look pretty similar, and let's go ahead and smooth out the let's go ahead and soften the edges. They look similar. However, here we've got 28 faces, and on here we've got 24. So we've got 4 faces that are different. A difference of 4 faces, excuse me. But this one is comprised completely of polygons, four-sided polygons, and this one is polygons and tris, which makes cleaning up a lot different, and just we don't want this part right here. It's just ugly and it causes a lot of problems. And someone once told me to work smarter, not harder, so that's why I use this method. Then we're going to go ahead and use this really kind of a rough circle here, sphere, and you could, if you wanted to, you could smooth it again, but again, that's going to make your polygon count higher, and we're going for low poly modeling, so we're going to go ahead and leave it at this. And what we're going to do here is go ahead and introduce another tool, which is the sculpting tool, right up at the top. This is going to allow us to give a little bit of a more natural look to it, a more organic look. This is not, even using this tool on a high poly model, it's very difficult to do real organic features. I think that's more reserved to things like ZBrush and Mudbox, but the sculpting part of this tool in Maya has come a really long way, and it is very capable now, but it's still not on par with, again, something that's geared more towards organic modeling. So let's take the sculpt tool and let's open it up, and let's start sculpting. You probably see that's entirely too strong for what we're trying to do. So over here on strength, we're going to dial it way down, probably down to, this still might be too strong. No, let's bump this down to 0.2, and we'll leave our brush size at that, and let's just start painting over these vertexes and giving our block a little more shape. And if you want to push in instead of pull out, simply hold the control button and click, and we're left mouse clicking on this. And you kind of see this is very sharp, but just keep moving around and just kind of feeling it out and see kind of where you're going, and just play around with it until you get the shape that you like. You can also hold down shift and click over these, and it's going to average out the vertex values with the ones around it, so it tries to it's basically the smooth tool, and it is smoothing. You can see how those are less harsh, and we're still getting, you know, the results that we want. I think I want to pull these out more and pull this one out and out here. There's no right or wrong way to sculpt it because rocks are all different. So just find a shape that you want and just kind of go with it and see where it leads you. We'll kind of take the harshness off of that. Just smoothing around. Bring these up. Maybe it has one side bigger than the other. Like so. Bring it down a little bit. And there are other tools too. Up here you can see this one is the smooth tool, which we use just by holding shift, but you can click on that and get to it. This is the relax tool, and all of these tell you exactly what they're doing. The grab tool, this is really good too if you want to make big changes. You can see we're slowly grabbing the vertex and we're moving it out. And again, you can use the smooth tool with this as well just by holding shift. So let's grab some of these, and we can also take the strength down as well. And you can even adjust where you would like to move on the direction, but I think screen works good because you should always be moving around your model and finding what needs to be improved or changed so that it looks, you know, it looks good. So we're going to go ahead and call that, done. I just want to smooth some of those out a little bit. And yeah, we'll call that done. That's our little boulder rock. So let's go ahead and close that panel and go back to our move tool since we've moved some vertices around, and DV, dog Victor, really good thing to remember. Hold X, move it back down to the 0, 0 plane. And now what we want to do is we want to project some UVs for this rock. Before we do that, let's go ahead and assign a new material. And we're going to do like we did in the first one, where we're going to apply a Lambert, click on the little file menu and say checker. Again, press 6 for textured view, and we can see that, you know, for the most part it does look pretty good, except there are a few places that do not make a whole lot of sense and are not squares, which would end up really messing this guy up. So let's go into our Lambert again. What I'm going to do is this place 2D texture. We're going to repeat this 10 by 10. I think it'll help you see a little bit better what I'm talking about. You can see these clear seams in our texture. Not at every Not at every edge, but almost at every edge. And that's definitely something that we don't want, because we want this to look seamless, because this is going to probably be something that we can use as a tiny rock, but we can also blow it up, increase the scale, and use it on something maybe in the background. Maybe if we're doing a little pile of rocks, a clutter pile, just to break up the ground around a house or something, we definitely want those seams to not show up. We want it to look natural. That's the key point to this whole video. And rocks are a really good thing to practice on, because once you can get the rock texture looking good, there's really nothing stopping you from doing something a lot bigger. So let's open up our UV editor so I can show you a little better as to what's happening. Since we started off with a cube, where is my, there we go. Since we started off with a cube, our UVs that were laid out are in the cube formation, and obviously we don't have a cube anymore, so